Hey everybody, welcome back to the Downpour, Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Torrent podcast. RJ, we are on the eve of the regular season kicking off. The team is probably right now on their way up to Vancouver. When I left about 40 minutes ago, the buses had already pulled up in front of KCI ready for them. So I'm assuming they're probably on their way now. And I mean, I just can't wait to actually see this team play a game. They were in Vancouver this past weekend. They did play some scrimmage games. Unable to see them.
Yeah, and it is a different feel certainly than what we're used to, because we're not used to seeing a team about to go play their first regular season game, and we have not watched them play a game before together at all. So it's a bit of an adjustment for us. We've definitely, we've gone to training camp, we've seen all that, but even then it's such a condensed timeline for the training camp and for everything to get together. I know you asked Coach O'Rourke about that yesterday, about just even installing the systems and all of that stuff that we'll get to. But it's going to be very interesting as the team just kind of tries to hit the ground running here. But today we're going to try and give you all a preview of what that team is going to actually look like.
Yeah, 6 practices, 2 scrimmages, and then they just dive right into the regular season. So kind of like how quick it is, in the sense that, like, okay, you get excited because they're together, they're starting, they're playing, they're practicing, whatever, and then you're just like jumping right into meaningful hockey. But I would imagine on their side of things, it's probably a little annoying. Certainly for the coaching staff, it's a lot to get into, and for the players too. Being an expansion team, so many players coming from different rosters, playing with each other for the first time. It's got to be difficult to try to build that chemistry quick, and especially because we have seen some shakeups to the lines from last week to this week, and what it seems like the team is going to probably run with tomorrow in Vancouver. I'm assuming the lines and the setups that they would run yesterday and today would be probably what they're going to go into Vancouver with. We're going to assume that, because I don't know why else you would have these matchups together if that was not going to be the case.
I mean, that's usually how hockey teams operate, right? If
Mhm.
you're running lines for the previous couple days going into a game, that's usually what you expect to see for the game following.
Yeah, there's some surprises to the lineup that I don't think people have seen coming. So can't wait to talk about those. But we'll start with what we do know about the scrimmages from this past weekend. RJ, they get shut out in the first scrimmage against Vancouver this past weekend. I'm trying to get there. We go 3-0. Again, who's to say what happened in that game and like how it ended up with that? But an inauspicious start to the Seattle Torrent franchise, getting shut out 3-0. But at the same time, it sounded like none of the players, coaching staff were very concerned when we spoke with them yesterday about that.
Yeah, it seems like that was to be expected with two teams that have really never played together before. Coach O'Rourke, I forget, did he describe it as like ping pong or volleyball hockey? I forget, just
Yeah.
back and forth, really, where the puck just jumps off somebody's stick, and the chemistry is clearly lacking there. And so I think you really don't want to read too much into an early result like that. But yeah, I mean, we don't know exactly what happened. All we have to go off of is just the score sheet.
Yeah, so it makes things a little difficult. I mean, there are certain things that we can look at and tell. They outshot Vancouver, so they were going out there. They were registering those shots. They're trying to make stuff happen there. Also, I'm not. It's hard to do the total math, but it looked like they might have also out hit Vancouver, and that really kind of plays into everything that we've heard from, I mean, whether it's general manager Megan Turner, head coach Steve O'Rourke, or any of the players that we've talked to. Whenever we try to get a read on the identity and play style of this team, we're told two things, and that's fast and physical. I don't know what else you would be as a hockey team. Those kind of feel like the only two things you could be as a hockey team, other than like slow and soft,
We
which
want we
you
want to be
probably don't
slow and
want to be.
avoid all contact.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not a lot to go off of. Again, they've been very coy when it comes to answering that question. Trust me, we in the media have been asking that question a lot, and nobody has wanted to give a definitive answer. I think in part because the team is going to be so fresh and new, and just like with what they talked about with this game, I've talked about it. The decision not to televise or broadcast these two first scrimmages between the Vancouver and Seattle team, I very much understood why they would do that. I know it was frustrating for a lot of teams. It makes sense to me, RJ, because these teams are going to be so new. They had about 5 days to get used to each other and try to build chemistry and try to have the very beginnings of their systems installed, all of that stuff. The product was not going to be good. We knew that, and so I understand the league and the teams making the decision that, hey, let's maybe not have that out there, right? There's still a lot of people, unfortunately, that would love to grab clips of a really sloppy, poor hockey game and then use that as evidence of why this league shouldn't exist, right? Or why women's professional sports shouldn't be around and all of that kind of stuff. So I understand them not wanting to broadcast it. I wish they'd given us like a media feed or something, just something to watch the game. So anything really to go off of. But I do understand that decision that they initially made there.
Yeah, I get it too, and especially just the amount of people that are eager to share things like that without context. And yeah, the product was never going to be great, but that's not what it's for. It's just for tuning up and getting some of that chemistry together. And I think too, I mean, even as we head into the game tomorrow, the product itself is probably it's going to look very different than how
Mhm.
it'll look by the end of the season, 30 games in, even 10 games in. And you see that whether it's women's hockey, men's hockey, any sport really that's a team sport where you have people having to play together cohesively. That's just what it's gonna be. So I think that's something that we should all be remembering going into the game tomorrow. I mean, for both teams really, because thankfully Vancouver is in the very same spot.
Yes, they are. They're both expansion teams, and even though they are loaded expansion rosters, the likes of which we've never seen in any sport ever, basically, it's still an expansion team. It's still a group of players coming together for the first time and having to go through this. And really, it's not too dissimilar to when the PWHL started and how those original teams kind of looked for that first season, where there was a lot of growing pains and the hockey was substantially better year two than it was year one, just because players had time to build that chemistry, go through proper camps, all of that kind of stuff, have those on ice relationships that are, needed for you to kind of go beyond just the most basic fundamentals of the sport out there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, quick question, taking a little aside here, but just about the expectations of all that stuff, Dylan.
Yeah.
Like, as we kind of prepare everyone's expectations for the season, at what point are you really going to be cluing in like, okay, now we can have like reasonable expectations for the chemistry? Is it like 5 games in, 10 games in? Like for you, I know we'll adjust it based on what we see, but generally how long? I know different team, different league and everything, but like the Dan Bilesma 20 game thing that we've cited so many times
Hmm.
just in hockey, you can't take 20 games in the
No.
PWHL because that's 2/3 of the season.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, we could get into this now. I'll just drop this. The Torrent did win the second of the two scrimmages 4-2. Things apparently went a lot better in that game. Again, your guess as to how and why is as good as
Yeah,
ours.
I'm
But
not going to put much weight into either of those two. Win
yes.
or loss, just it's whatever.
Yes. So when it comes to expectations, yesterday, I mean, I asked head coach Steve O'Rourke about, I mean, basically that. I was hoping for something along the lines of expectations, and then boy, did I get an answer that was exactly what I was looking for, and is exactly going to answer this question. And I'll probably just put the whole audio clip in here, like in just a sec. I'll set it up, and then I'll just put the whole audio clip, and then we can talk about that. But I asked him straight up, right? How you don't have a ton of time in camp. How is it installing your systems both for 5-on-5 and on the power play, and how much of that do you expect to bleed into the regular season? And I threw in a kind if at all, but we all know it was going to bleed into the regular season. And so I'll in post add in the audio clip of his answer here, but then RJ and I can just talk about it in a second.
Well, it really just comes down to expectations. We try to put everything in, but you just have to have realistic expectations on how much is getting in. We have we have flooded them a lot in camp here, but we preempted that by giving them a lot of the information ahead of time so they can see it, read it, believe in. They've been able to read it, they've been able to see it, and then they've been able to do it. So we've checked all the boxes of learning styles, and now The nice thing was coming out of the weekend, you can put things in for the week, but until you get into that live action and get that real feedback, and that's what we got this weekend. We get the feedback of, okay, we like this, we didn't like that, we can improve here, let's keep this going. So we just keep building and layering and understanding, like, at the end of the day, it's 30 games. We don't know who's all making the playoffs, but it's not a sprint. It's a journey to the end. So we just want to get better every day and every week, and then every month. We just build as we go in, and we have some very definitive plans on how we see that developing over the year through rivalry break, through Olympic break, things like that, that we can help our players improve throughout the year and be ready to explode really in that last month and a half, no matter where we're at, just continue to go up as that season continues on.
Okay, RJ. First thing out of his mouth when I asked that question is really it just comes down to expectations, which is exactly what you're talking about. And I think that I mean, that's what I was kind of trying to go for with the how much of it's going to bleed into the regular season, because we talked about it last week. We've talked about it all along with this team. It's going to be, it's going to be probably some fairly basic hockey at the start. It might be a little sloppy at times as that chemistry builds. And it sounds like in his answer, at least the way I'm reading that answer, is that yeah, he knows it's going to be that way too, and he's kind of setting that up for everybody as well.
Right. And I think it's important to do as a coach, but also set that expectation up for your players as well. And I like that he talked about the way that he's presented it to the players and kind of checking all the boxes of the learning styles
Yep.
as well, giving them that information, giving them the systems at least a couple months in advance where they knew, okay, this is kind of the way that we're going to be playing. Still takes a lot of time to build that into muscle memory and into what you're able to do on the ice. But I like that it seems like he's being proactive about it.
Yes, as somebody whose mom has written books on different learning styles and how important it is in education, hearing him say the three learning styles and talking about, sending them that information ahead of time, talking with them leading into training camp, and then going out there and actually physically doing it. I mean, he's checking the boxes of, whether you're a sight-based learner, auditory learner, kinesthetic learner, he's checking all the boxes. Sounds like he's totally on board with that. So that was music to my ears, but it is really kind of how you would have to deal with this setup. And it's one of those things where it's like, look, I can't imagine doing it any other way, but it's really nice to hear the confirmation that that is in fact how it was done, that there was that open line of communication to the players prior to training camp, prior to the 6 whole days of training camp that they get to spend together, that they were all going to be on the same page and be able to make the most of camp the moment that they got there.
Exactly. And it is the way that I would think logically you'd want to do it. It makes a lot of sense. But man, the longer you follow hockey and the deeper you follow hockey, the more you find examples of times where teams have not approached things in the way that would make sense on paper.
Yeah, yeah. But then when it comes to the expectations and kind of how, when should we start expecting things like this? I think the end of that clip, it's a little interesting, right? Because almost sounds like he's really setting it up for it might take 2/3 of the season to get there, when he specifically highlights making a big push for the last month of the season, right? And he says, look, who knows about playoffs and all of that kind of stuff, but really sounded like he's just setting checkpoints for how far along they should be when they hit takeover tour time and when they hit Olympic time. And then hopefully everything's able to come together and really gel, and they're able to go into that last month of the season and make their big push.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair way to look at it. But also, I mean, you look at how much talent this team has on paper. And I know you've alluded to it in the past, even on our last episode, talking about how good the team really should be by the end of the season, even if it doesn't start off that way. I think they are good enough on paper. That, I mean, certainly better than 7 of the 8 teams for sure in this league on paper, that if you can get to your peak performance and everybody is dialed in by the last month of the season, that should be enough games for you to really go on a run, collect those 3 points enough times and sneak into the playoffs, even if you haven't had the strongest start, as long as you've just been kind of treading water until then.
Yeah, no, I think the same thing. I mean, with the strength of this roster, I have to imagine, even if they're not always all on the same page and it's taking them a while to really go out there and execute the systems that they want to, this team is still going to be winning games. Like they're not going to go 0-20 and then put on a big push in the last month of the season, right?
Yeah.
Like that would be that it's just not going to happen with how talented this group is. And so I think that he does have, in that sense, right? Like he has the time to really make sure that they're working on things and going about it that way and setting in those checkpoints and hopefully meet them as you go. And it's a unique setup, and I think that again that's what he was really referring to. It's not so much just straight wins and losses, but I think for him it's really just like, you know, that is when I expect the full system to really be in place and everybody to be on the same page, and for it to really be the primary thing that's helping us win games, or win games the way we want to win, rather than just straight talking about wins and losses.
Yeah, and I like that attitude from the coach early on, especially. I mean, you get a little further in the season, you're 10 games in, you can start to talk a little bit more about wins, losses, results, where you are in the standings. But right now, I think that's the mindset you want to have.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I will I will take that answer. Like great answer. Could not have ever gotten that from an NHL head coach.
Nope. Absolutely not. It's been so refreshing, whether it's the coach or the players or just talking to anyone around this team. The answers we've been getting, I don't know, the transparency, the enthusiasm, the personality.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just been so fun covering this team so far, and we've only been doing it for a couple weeks.
I know, 2 weeks basically. It is night and day, and it's a it's a welcome change. I will definitely say that. Anything else when we're kind of talking about the maybe expectation and kind of previewing things in a very general sense before we start getting into the roster, the final cuts, the final roster, and then of course lines and kind of what we're expecting from the players individually.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at it, and I think you see the standings for the whole league, and the other teams are going to be playing against. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they match up against teams that are not Vancouver, and just whether that's close or not. When you were talked about kind of treading water in the first half of the season, or at least getting enough points, and that they're going to be able to do that. I think they're going to be able to win some games on talent alone, even if you make mistakes.
I agree.
And so I'm just curious to see how much they're able to do on the talent alone before the system comes together. I know that kind of just plays into what we just talked about, but like I'm really fascinated by that, because we haven't seen anything like this coming out of an expansion process like ever.
Right. And how hard are those other teams going to play these two expansion teams, right? Both Seattle and Vancouver. And we talked about this last week, right? Sardakny's quote of like, everybody hates us after that. Like, and why wouldn't they, right? And so I am curious to see if when the existing franchises go into games against the Torrents or the Golden Eyes, are those the games that you kind of circle on the calendar and you're like, okay, we got to step up big for this one? I don't know why
Yeah,
it wouldn't be.
I would think so. And that matters in hockey. Certainly the level of effort, I guess, or the amount of locked in you get from your opponent, that really does matter, especially over the course of a longer season. So, um, Dylan, can it be tomorrow
I
already?
know. I know. Well, and again, we won't even have that answer until
I
a
know that's
week from
true.
tomorrow for the home opener at Climate Pledge Arena on the 28th, when Minnesota is going to come to town, and we are going to see one of those existing franchises play Seattle, and we'll see how that goes. I mean, again, Minnesota, back-to-back champions, also a team that probably everybody circles on their calendar and tries to lock in for. So be a good test, I think, early in the season here for Seattle against one of those teams to play the reigning champion. I think that that's probably a good way to start the season. You're going to learn a lot. It might be difficult. It's going to be difficult actually to go against Vancouver, the other stacked team like you are, and then go and play the back-to-back champions. But I think you're going to learn a lot, and I'm sure if you were to ask the coaching staff candidly, you know, is that actually a little exciting for you, because you're going to really see what your team needs to work on and what they already have down? My guess is they would say yes.
If you're not excited by that, you probably don't get to this level of pro hockey.
Probably not. Probably not. But yeah, as we transition over into the roster and stuff, I mean, the thing that makes at least the Seattle team better than a lot of the existing franchises, and why I think that they'll still be competitive against them while they're still figuring things out, is the fact that a lot of teams in the PWHL, when it comes to, scoring rates, they'll have one line, right? Like there's kind of enough elite talent around this league that every team can have 2 to 3 top tier forwards that can go out there and really drive offense. Everybody has a pretty good starting D pair around the league because, again, you're talking about a league with only 8 teams in it. There's a lot of women's hockey players from all around the world. That's a lot of talent being consolidated right into those rosters. What makes Seattle different, and where I think that they have the edge, is you have a second pair on the D that would be a top pair on just about any other team. And then you have, I mean, you're going to have to be scratching a really good blue liner who should probably be playing on a different team under normal circumstances. But I think Seattle has the deepest blue line of any team in the league. And then you look over with the forward group, and obviously you have Carpenter, Knight, first line. You have those star players, but then you're going to have a second line that is potentially going to be on par with a lot of teams' first lines there as well. And then, of course, you get some depth scoring in the bottom six on top of it. Those things, like at some point, that's just going to win out against teams. I don't know how it can't when you just have that much more talent than other groups.
Yeah, I think the only other like forward group certainly that could even hang with that a little bit is maybe Vancouver, who went a little
Yeah.
bit more forward heavy through the expansion process. But this blue line is just unmatched anywhere else in the league. I can't think of another blue line that even really comes close to it in terms of high end talent and depth. It's crazy the players that they're going to have to scratch for games, especially on this blue line. And so you see this kind of collection of talent, and it's going to lead to a lot of difficult decisions, I think, for the coaches, but a lot, basically, I guess, a lot of good problems to have is the way that I
Yes.
would categorize it.
Yeah. No, I think that that's fair. It's very fair. Um, all right, so let's just go ahead and get into it. We'll talk about the finalized roster that kind of came through today, because we had kind of our cuts yesterday, or the day before yesterday. We got the cuts, and then today we got the finalized roster as far as who's going to be the reserves versus on the active roster. The active roster is 23 players, and then each team gets 3 reserve players to have as well. So that's just the setup for how this works. I mean, I don't know if you have it up, if you want to do this, because it's like normally your thing to do the roster management stuff, or if you want me to handle it, RJ. But
Sure, I've got the roster
yeah.
up. I mean, should we just go like in the order that it's listed on the roster and just go
Well,
by
I was gonna say
position group?
let's talk about the like the reserve players and the cuts, and then when
Okay.
we can go into the roster, and I have all the lines and everything, so we can go like kind of line by line through the active roster.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. So there are 3 reserve players for the torrent that they've named. So it's defender Emily Zumwinkle, and then 2 forwards, Jada Havish and Sydney Langseth. Those are the 3 reserves. Dylan, do you have the cuts?
No, not up on
Final cuts
not,
there.
not
Sorry.
on hands. Well, I could talk about them while you pull it up. I thought Emily Zumwinkle has looked fantastic through camp on D. Like incredibly physical player, been able to move just about everybody out of the net front whenever she's out there. Solid puck mover, really like at times outplayed maybe some other people on the blue line, but I think it's just a symptom of having the deepest blue line in the league that a player like Emily Zumwinkle can't make the roster, right? I think she would be on a roster just about anywhere else. But it's just the unfortunate reality of, at least this year, how this blue line is going to be set up, and the amount of depth that they have. But she was one of the most impressive players through camp.
Yeah, definitely. And I have the 2 cuts here from a couple days ago. Olivia Wallen and Lily Jovetic are the 2 there. And so they're free to go to any other team.
Right. And Wallen was notable because that was one of their draft picks.
Yeah, she was their 6th rounder.
Yeah. And Mariah Wagner, camp invite, beat her out for the spot. So, and we'll talk about her in a little bit, but that is
Yeah.
that is
Notable
something.
hometown for Mara Wagner.
Yep, exactly. But that is something that is a little, a little surprising. Normally, I think that wouldn't be the case, but I think because of how deep the team is too, it was going to be hard for all of your draft picks to make the roster anyway.
Yeah. Well, general question for you, Dylan, do you look at that as a good sign or maybe not so good a sign that you had a draft pick that didn't play well enough to make the roster, or as a good thing that it was an open enough competition that you had somebody go and earn a spot that wasn't a draft pick?
I think it's a good thing that you had an open enough like
Yeah.
situation, and again, you're talking about a sixth round draft pick, so it's not like, you know, I mean, if it
Yeah.
was even a
Really high
third,
pick.
yeah,
That just,
third round
yeah.
pick gets outplayed by a camp invite, that's maybe something to be concerned about. When you're talking about a sixth round draft pick, I mean, you're talking about somebody that was potentially going to be just a scratch for you anyway.
Yeah, that's true. And also you talk about just on the like with this team, it's going to be just so difficult.
Yeah, I was gonna say this year you're so stacked that even your high draft picks, right? Like Jenna Buglioni is gonna be stuck on the third line all year. Like
Yeah.
your first round pick, like you have nowhere else to put her because of how deep your group is. So I think that it's one of those things where it's like an odd symptom of year one with the expansion setup that you had.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the reserves and the cuts there. Which position group should we go with first as we look at the lines pairing? Should we start net out or should we go the other way?
Let's go the other way. We'll start with the forward
Okay.
groups, and I think we go net out for the Kraken. I think the superstars on this team are with the forward group, right? The names that everybody knows and wants to hear about are there. So I think we should go there. So we're getting an interesting grouping here up front because going into this, we all expected the top line for this team to be Alex Carpenter centering Hillary Knight and Hannah Bilka. Hillary Knight and Hannah Bilka played together in Boston last year. Incredible seasons for both of them. Great chemistry together. I mean, again, just like ludicrous numbers from the two of them last year when you look at everything. They're not paired up together anymore. They were paired up together last week. They're not paired up together anymore. Julia Gosling is actually sliding up onto that first line to play with Carpenter and Knight, RJ. And honestly, I think I kind of get it. When I
Hmm.
look at the roster as a whole, and we'll talk about this maybe a little bit well, I guess we'll talk about the second line too. We'll kind of lump them together because for me, it makes sense because with Alex Carpenter and Hillary Knight, you have players that are a little bit more physical. I think you're that's a line that's going to want to play to the inside a little bit more. Julia Gosling has very good size, physical player, still has an incredible shot. I think arguably the best shot on the team. You know, it's in competition with Hillary Knight, which is incredible company to be in. But I think that line can become more of a not necessarily a full on like grinded out kind of line because they're still going to play with plenty of speed, but I think that's going to be your more physically focused line. And then having a player like Kanabilka who's more on the small, skilled, speedy side of things with a player like Danielle Serdachny, who is the fastest skater on this team through all of the drills, you then start really building a speed line. And so you can kind of have that 1-2 punch of a more physical line and then your more speedy line, both highly skilled but just kind of grouping the players that are going to play that way together so that line can have a true identity when they go out there.
Yeah, and I think there are multiple ways you can approach it as a coach. You can try and put together like skill sets and have that try and overwhelm another team. You can also try and kind of mix and match and have players complement each other. But I do like starting off with the similar skill sets. And I mean, I look at the Knight Carpenter Gosling line, the physicality that line can bring, the shot on either side of center from Knight and Gosling. I know you've raved about Julia Gosling's shot, and I've seen it in training camp too. I mean, it is really impressive. As as a goaltender, I mean, as defenders even trying to keep the puck out of space for either Gosling or Knight to be able to get a clean shot off, and then as a goaltender having to deal with both of them on one line, it's just such a handful. I don't know how you really deal with it. I don't know how other teams are really going to approach that. And yes, I'm a big fan of Hannah Bilka. You know, I like the
Mhm.
skill set that she brings with that speed and skill, my type of player. But I think that might actually be better. Yeah, than on a line with like Serdachny and you build a speed line and then you can roll those two back to back too. You have a line that's just going to punish you and can shoot from anywhere. And then another line where you bring them right out over the boards and you have to skate. You have to
Mhm.
skate so hard and so fast, or else they are just going to burn you. It's a heck of a 1-2 punch.
Yes, and on the other side of Hannah Bilka and Sardakny is, of course, Jesse Eldridge, who's, again, good skater, somebody who can score, kind of ridiculous that she has to play on a second line in this league, but it's just how deep this team is up front, or at least in this top six. But I think that both of those lines are just going to, be incredible out there because you're talking about players, when you look at like game score last year, RJ, in the PWHL, and I'm using Kyle Cushman's incredible PWHL master spreadsheet that you can find if you just Google for it. I mean, Hillary Knight led the league in game score last year. Jesse Eldridge was in the top 10 last year. Alex Carpenter not too far out of the top 10 there. So, already you're talking about players like that. And then when you look at Hannah Bilka, kind of just miss some games, and that's what keeps her out of that group. And then with Sardakny and Julia Gosling, it was just the playtime. They were just kind of buried, younger players buried on lower down on their the depth charts, but clearly like played well enough to deserve more of an opportunity, and they're going to get it here in Seattle. And I expect big numbers. Like when they're the two players that I have like to watch, and the two players that I think could really break out. And I thought that by the time we got to record this, it would be like kind of cool and be like, oh wow, okay, breakout players. But then they've just like lit up everything all training camp long, to the point where like I don't even know that they're considered breakout performers anymore. But Gosling with the shot, and I know you haven't been able to get to as much camp as me, but I at least for you and everybody listening, watch Julia Gosling tomorrow and tell me she doesn't look like Leon Draisaitl in how she carries herself. She kind of has that like, broad-shouldered approach. She wants to line up for a one-timer opportunity, and the way that she protects the puck, right, using her upper body and everything. Like when I watch her throughout camp, I see Leon Draisaitl, just like the way she plays. And then and I think that that's going to be, again, incredible to watch. Her shot is fantastic. She's been my player to, my breakout player all camp. I've been telling everybody in the media pool. And then the other one is Sardakny, who I think a lot of people expect a lot from, kind of nationally. They knew what kind of player she was last year going into Ottawa. Again, second overall pick in the PWHL entry draft the previous season. Unfortunately, just couldn't get the ice time she needed in Ottawa because of their center depth. Going to be the second line center here. She's going to get that ice time. And the speed that she has played with, I mean, it's almost been an issue in camp because she will enter the zone. She'll get up the ice so quick coming out of the defensive zone that she enters the offensive zone so far ahead of her wingers that then she has to like really hold up, and the defense just kind of collapses in on her. I'm sure that that's the kind of stuff that'll get worked out once we get into the regular season. But it's been kind of crazy to watch just how fast she can play the game while retaining all of the puck skills and all of the things necessary, the playmaking, the vision. It's all there while she's just seemingly moving twice as fast as anybody else.
And now that you say that too, I also think about the choice to put the like players together, Gosling on that top line, Serdachny sitting that second line. And maybe that helps a little bit with the chemistry early on, just because again, no one's played with each other before. And so at least having players that can play at a similar speed, while you might move a Bilka with a Serdachny, and so the two of them can kind of play at a similar speed.
Yeah. No, and it does seem to be working. Like I do think that's why we're not seeing Bilka with Carpenter and Knight, is because Serdachny needed a winger that was going to be as fast as she was. And that was definitely the case today when they were doing rush drills. There was a play where Serdachny was able to make a pass over to Hannah Bilka, and the defense was just all turned around. And it was by far and away the fastest developing play that we saw. And it was the two of them going to work. Goalie had no chance trying to get across for the one timer from Bilka, and it was probably the most impressive play of the day, honestly. And it was just because of the speed that the two of them could have together, and the ability for Serdachny to make that play over to Bilka, who of course has the finishing skills to finish in close and around the net and with speed as well. So I think that that's going to be a good pair for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And so, I mean, this top six, hard to beat anywhere in the whole league. And it's certainly got a character to it, I think.
Yeah.
Bottom six has a different character, though.
Yes, this is where, when the team talks about wanting to be physical, as much as that top line with players like Gosling, Carpenter, Knight can be very physical, this bottom six is going to be very physical. And I will say, and I've talked about this with you, some other members of the media, I do think the bottom six is going to be like the one thing that maybe is, not where things are going to fall apart, because it's still a very skilled and talented bottom six, but I think that it's probably the weakest part of this roster on paper.
If this team has a single weakness, which that's still a big if.
It is,
This
yes.
would
Like,
be it.
it's still, you're talking about like, pick any great player, right? Pick Sidney Crosby, pick Hillary Knight, and you're like, oh, this is the weakest part of their game, and it's still going to be better than like 95% of the rest of players, best skill, right? When you're just talking about it. And so, like, when I talk about the bottom six and I look at it and I think, okay, it's maybe the weakest part of this team, it really speaks to a lot of the rest of the team that this would be the weakest part of it for sure.
It's all relative.
Yeah, it is definitely relative. But the bottom six, as of what we've gotten today, line wise, was Wagner, Buglioni, Bryant as your third line, and then Deja, Grant Mathis, and Snodgrass as your fourth line. Grant Mathis down the middle was a little bit of an interesting look because we hadn't seen that before. So centering the fourth line, go with it, okay, yeah. Why not? But definitely that fourth line is a physical line. You look at like Deja, Grant Mathis, Snodgrass, like these are players that were very high up when it came to like hits per 60 last year in the PWHL. That's kind of where they ply their trade. But also like Grant Mathis, a player very willing to shoot the puck, had a pretty decent shooting percentage, if I recall. I'll try to confirm that. I wish I could like sort or search in the spreadsheet, but there's no like editing abilities on it, so I have to literally just scroll and hope I don't scroll past.
Well, it's okay. I mean,
name.
I can fill some time while you look that up, because I mean, I do like what I've seen from Michaela Grant Mentis, like also known as Bucky, on that fourth line. Just the energy, the skating that she brings. She's very fast as far as like straight line speed that I've noticed, especially to loose pucks, and that's the kind of thing that's just going to give other teams fits. And then you're looking up the shooting percentage there, but I think some underrated shooting talent as well.
Yeah, and she's more of the like kind of speed and skill component of that line, where like Adija is going to be somebody who's going to go in there and play super physical. Snodgrass is somebody that's going to go in there and play super physical, want to be at the net front. That's very much where she has been posting up during things. But then like Grant Mentis, good two-way player last year, one of the better players when it came to goals for percentage relative, and then had the higher shooting percentage at 7%. And I will take this as an opportunity to say that shooting percentages are lower in the PWHL than what you're going to be used to seeing in the NHL. Goalie save percentages in the PWHL are higher than what you're used to seeing in the NHL. So when you look at a player's shooting percentage, or you look at a goalie's save percentage in this league, know that you do have to kind of change the framework that you're looking at it, because otherwise you're going to look at like goalies in this league and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, they're all superstars. And like they are, because it is only a 8-team league. There's only 8 starting jobs. They are the best of the best in the whole world. But it is substantially different than what you're going to see in the NHL. And definitely that goes with the shooting percentages, where, yes, you're going to have the few players that really, excel there. MPP in Montreal, 20% shooting percentage. Legit, right? Like insane. For the most part, a lot of other players going to be in that low double digits, and that's where a lot of them are going to sit. And then a plenty of very good players that are still going to put in a decent amount of goals are going to be in the high single digits. They're going to be around that 7% mark, like Bucky is, you know, still able to definitely put the puck in the net, be able to produce a lot, points per 60 wise, goals per 60 wise. But it is different than the NHL when you're looking at stats like this.
Yeah. So you just want to adjust your if you are used to NHL hockey, just kind of adjust your stats outlook accordingly for the shooting percentages there. But I think that's a good thing to monitor. But yeah, I mean this bottom six gonna be just a handful to deal with.
Yes,
Like
certainly.
yeah,
Go
go
for it.
ahead.
No, I was going to say certainly that fourth line, and I think I was going to come back to the third line because we kind of skipped over it. One of the things that's interesting about the third line, and this is where I think where maybe that weakness part of the team comes in, is because it's a pretty inexperienced third line, especially with Jenna Buglioni, your first round pick, centering that group. You're talking about Wagner on one wing, who was a camp invite and
Yeah.
made the team, right? Like you're talking about players that I think are a little less experienced, certainly in the case of Bugs, and then a camp invite player in Wagner, things like that. And so I think that that's where you might see a little bit of that dip, especially early on in the season. And Jenna Buglioni has been fantastic with all the media availabilities. Seems like
She's a
she's
natural with that.
always there, and I think that's because she is so good at it. But has been talking about just getting used to the speed and the pace of play and everything like that, and how valuable those scrimmages were, and being able to do that. But even today, I was talking with Charles from Circling Seattle Sports, and I was just like, she does seem like just a little bit slow on everything still, right? Like she's still trying to catch up to that. And I think some of that is not having played in the PWHL before, but also some of it is, as she mentioned yesterday, she hasn't been in a hockey game since March when her college season ended. And so it's just been a long time. And I think that even though you train and you're now in training camp is short. And I think there's probably still an element of rust that is just trying to be knocked off there with her.
Yeah, and I think that's all to be expected. I do wonder, and this is where I would have loved to. I mean, I guess it didn't make a big difference in the two preseason games, but where I'm really interested in the ice time distribution between the third and fourth lines, because I could see maybe early on a more experienced fourth line getting a little bit more play in certain situations, especially like defensive type situations, than that third line. You might want to shelter it a little bit more
Hmm.
potentially, but I we'll find all that out tomorrow.
Yeah. And then you look at the other component of that third line, Brooke Bryant, who's a player who averaged 6 minutes on the wing in Minnesota last year. So again, somebody who played the PWHL, but just not getting a lot of time and ice time out there. And so was very promising in that. One of the top players actually in the league when it came to points per 60, 4 points in 26 games while averaging only 6 minutes of ice time. Pretty significant. Shot 8.3%. That is, again, a
Efficient.
good number this year in this league. Yeah. So I think that it's a third line that has a lot of potential. And you look at like Wagner's production in the second scrimmage game, and Buglioni being a first round pick, and Brooke Bryant being one of these, potentially buried on a good Minnesota team, but efficient players. Like I think it's a third line that has a lot of potential, but I think it's going to be the slowest starting line for this team, and it's going to take the longest to probably come together.
Yeah, probably. Also, yeah, shout out Brooke Bryant. Love to see the California players
Hmm.
making it. Those from the whole West Coast, but from California too, Stockton area. So that's fun to see.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So yeah, that's going to be your starting lineup up front for the Seattle Torrent. Again, it's a pretty stacked lineup. Like it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, look around the rest of the league. You're not going to find a lot of forward groups that have this kind of talent.
Yeah, no, they do not exist. And then certainly on the blue line, you're not going to find groups that have as much talent as this one. Starting D pair for this team is going to be Terlova Brown, and that is again not necessarily what we were expecting. I think everybody was expecting Terlova with Barnes up on
Mhm.
the first group, but I don't hate breaking them up either and just kind of spreading the wealth through the lineup.
Well, I think that's one of the big advantages that you have with such a deep blue line is that you can make sure that, depending on how you distribute the ice time, but you can make sure that for, nearly the full game, at least two-thirds of it, that one of Terralova and Kayla Barnes are on the ice at any given time. And then with also just how strong this blue line is, even 5 and 6, your third D pair, that's huge for what you're going to be able to do. Opposing forwards are just going to have to deal with some excellent defenders on the ice at all times. So I don't mind splitting the two up.
I don't mind it either. And again, seeing it today too, like you start to see why that would be the case, especially because with both Caleb Barnes and with Terlova, they're so well rounded as and they're so, you're not talking about say blue liners that are just offensive or just defensive. Like their games are so complete that being able to spread that through the lineup I think also makes a lot of sense. It'd be one thing if one of them was just like solidly an offensive defender and then the other is more defensive. You'd be like, okay, maybe we've got to keep them together there. But no, with both of them being just so complete and well rounded, I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of split them up the way that you had. Both of them big on shot blocks. That's a big part of their game, towards the top of the league in blocks per 60 last year. Terlova, a little bit more physical than Caleb Barnes as far as how many hits delivered per games. But let me tell you, Caleb Barnes delivers giant hits, like the big ones that are going to wake up the crowd and get everybody going and cheering. Those are going to come from Caleb Barnes.
Definitely. And it's awesome to see at her size too. The shortest player on the team. She packs some of the strongest punch of anybody.
Yeah, definitely. And then again, it's so hard to like sort through the master sheet without being able to directly sort it. But Terlova, most veteran person on this blue line, most veteran player on the blue line, and like I said, incredibly well rounded, so smooth with the skating and the puck handling and everything like that, and just has that ability to slow the game down as a defender where that's just so valuable to everything. And I think it's going to be valuable, and the reason why Terlova is leading the top pairing versus Caleb Barnes is because having that ability as an expansion team, as a team that's coming together from a chemistry standpoint, I think Terlova being able to just kind of dictate the pace of play and everything like that is just going to be really valuable to this group. And I think that that's why she's getting the nod, and her pair with Emily Brown is getting that nod. There we go. There's Emily Brown. I was like, I'm like sorting and sorting. Emily Brown, again, another huge shot blocker. And again, today blocked a shot off like the kind of the side of her knee, and you could tell it stung. It stung for sure. But Emily Brown, pretty physical defender, and so I think that again, the pairing with Terlova is going to be able to kind of focus on the offense a little bit more than she probably would have playing with Caleb Barnes. Kind of control the puck, control the pace of play, and then Emily Brown's just going to go out there and eat pucks and chuck people into the boards and clear out the net front. Great PK player, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, it's a pair that I think complements each other really well. And I've been impressed with what I've seen from Emily Brown so far in this training camp. And also, she's been great with the media, too. I think she's someone that fans are going to like a whole lot. She's not afraid to show personality. I know she did a fun, like Instagram Reels type video for the team and everything, too, about camping and all that sort of thing. So, that was pretty cool. And I also, just as far as like, I'm looking at these top 2D pairs and the ice time distribution that you could really give them if you wanted to. I think you have such a good third pair that we'll get to in a second that you don't want to squeeze them too much. But talk about like workhorses on the blue line, though. I think of Terlova and I think of Caleb Barnes. And of course, I remember the two of them matched up against each other in that crazy 4 overtime game between Ottawa and Montreal in the playoffs last year, where Terlova played over 40 minutes. Caleb Barnes played 53-46 in that one. And so like the two of them can handle as much ice time as you're going to want to pile on these top 2D pairs.
Absolutely. No, I think that like that's the plan. And again, it's one of those things that nobody was really like expecting it, I feel like, or talking about it going into things. But then the moment like we saw the split up happen, and then thinking about it for a second, it just kind of makes more and more sense as we go through things. And then you talk about, Caleb Barnes being matched up with Anna Wilgren. And again, like this should be a top pair on on any other team. This would be a top pair. And look, they have experience both being with Montreal last year. Like they have played together. They know what they're doing together, and they complement each other well. Again, both players that can play in the offensive and defensive zone pretty equally well. Anna Wilgren, she lead the league in blocked shots last year. I think she might have, or at least blocks per 60. Just like oh, not quite, because but there's another player coming up who actually
Mhm.
that we'll talk about, who actually led the league. But yeah, this is a blue, that's a D pair with Barnes and Wilgren that is going to be probably a little bit more physical than the top pair with Emily Brown and Terlova, but I think that is going to be able to control things and is going to be dangerous on both sides of the ice, up at the point, moving the puck, and being able to take shots and do all of that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Wilgren too, also with that Montreal team. Both of them played over 50 minutes in that 4 overtime
Yeah,
game. So I mean, it's just a great D pair that you can just kind of import right over. The embarrassment of riches on this blue line
it's
is just
it's
nuts.
it's really crazy. And then the third D pair we have is Maria Keppel and Megan Carter. And again, for, like, pretty crazy blue line. This would be kind of, I mean, it's going to be their third D pair. This would be, I mean, at least a second D pair on most teams, I feel like.
Yeah. No, I mean, looking
Like,
around at the league, yes, I think you're right about that.
yeah. And we'll start with Keppel. Led the league in block shots last year. Like, just absolutely ate pucks like crazy. Again, more physical defender. Um, really excelled in the PK drills today as far as clearing out the net front. I mean, like some big physical battles against players like Hillary Knight, somebody who, loves to use her size, get to the net front, all of that kind of stuff. Able to go in there and clear Hillary Knight out of there. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, impressive, like on and off the ice so far too. Like I think because she was the one with the fashion show, right?
Yes.
Who has already like done a fashion show in Seattle already, despite having been here for like a month or two. So that's pretty cool as well. But yeah, on the blue line, block shots leader. How are you going to get pucks through? When we talk about the last D pair and then this one, I, like how many shots are the goaltenders that we'll get to eventually? How many shots are they even going to face?
I know. I mean, that is going to be part of it. The other thing I wonder though is how much of this is going to carry over when we talk about Wilgren, Barnes, and we talk about Keppel. They all are from Montreal, from that Victoire team.
Yeah.
How much of that was the system there, and then how much of it is them, and how much of that's going to carry over. And I think a lot of it's going to carry over based on the practices that we've seen. I think a lot of it's going to carry over. Like, these are players that are unafraid to get in those shooting lanes and to go down and block those shots. But we might not see like quite the same level, because I think this is overall because of the skill that this team has up front. They want to try to, get the puck moving in the opposite direction, maybe a little bit more than say what the Victoire were doing last year.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you don't want to block too many shots because that means you're in your own end and
Exactly.
you're having to block the shot. So I would expect those numbers to go down, but I do think it says something about just the ability to do that. That Megan Turner would go and basically get the three of them all from the one team. I think that's still an element of what Montreal was doing that you probably do want to import to Seattle if you're going to take all three.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, just incredible blue line. What everybody's able to do, and Carter again, no slouch either. As a player, again, this spreadsheet is absolutely killing me. There we go. And
It
Carter,
looks like it's currently being edited right now, actually, to
yeah,
be updated for today's changes. So
yeah, that
that's
is,
great.
yeah, no, it is. That is part of it. But Megan Carter, another physical defender, one of the top hitting defenders last year in the league. So again, the physical play that Steve O'Rourke talks about wanting this team to have, a lot of that is going to be led from the blue line.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Dylan, I've waited long enough.
Yes, you can talk about
Can I get to the
goalies. I'll turn
goalies?
it over to you. You can talk about all the goalies. Go for it.
Yes. All right. So, I mean, I love goalies. So, this is a good chance for me to talk about the goalies on this team. And there are three. All teams have to carry three goalies this season. So, that's just something to know about the PWHL. And so, it was pretty clear which three goalies were going to be there for the Torrent, the three that were in camp. And we got to start with the starter, Corinne Schroeder. She Came via New York. Still, actually, I believe has the Sirens mask and everything. Waiting on that new goalie gear to come in. But I think the big thing to know about her, and really about this goalie group, is just the difference in style from all
Mhm.
three of them. And this is something that I believe it was Megan Turner, the GM, talked about when asked about the goalie group. But Corinne Schroeder, larger goalie, 5'11", definitely has the height there and the size in net. More of a kind of stay at home, cover lots of net, blocker type of goalie. Then on the other hand, you have Carly Jackson, CJ, 5'5", much smaller presence in net, certainly, but the fast movement, like from side to side in the goal, just a very different goaltender. And I believe CJ is probably tracking to be the backup, right, Dylan?
Yeah, that's what it seems like, is that and kind of how I viewed this whole situation with the goaltenders is that they will be the backup this year on the 1-year contract. You draft Hannah Murphy in the second round this year, so again, you're investing a lot into Hannah Murphy. Makes sense though that you'd want a more veteran backup, somebody who has been in the league before. CJ backs up this year, and then next year that backup job probably goes to Hannah Murphy.
Yeah, that's how I see it too, and I think great observation for that you made yesterday. Because you look at it too, CJ only under contract for this season, free agent after this year. Hannah Murphy under contract for this year and next. Also, only 22 years old. You have the young goalie to develop in, and then stylistically, Hannah Murphy's kind of somewhere in between the two. I'd say a little bit more on the Schroeder side of just kind of using
Yeah.
the size and maybe less of the mobility there. But that's your trio in net. And I think that's probably the plan for the three of them. And we were wondering about the during the preseason game, right? The goaltending breakdown during one of the games where it was Jackson started played the first period, then Murphy came in for the second, and then back to Jackson for the third period. And that's not the way it's usually done. Usually it's
Yeah.
kind of split in around the halfway mark. You'll switch the goalies, but I think that's probably to give Jackson and maybe to a lesser extent Murphy practice coming in cold
Yeah.
like a backup would. Because I think the main thing to know about this goalie group is that Corinne Schroeder is the starter. She's going to play the majority of the
Absolutely.
games,
Yeah.
and she will be the main goalie.
Yeah, definitely. And is rocking the plain white mask now in camp, except for the back plate. Back plate from the Sirens mask remains, but all the other
But the two like
Sirens
key monsters,
branding.
what are those?
I don't
Do
know.
we know?
We gotta
Okay,
ask
gotta
about it.
ask her. Yeah.
But that is the update as of today. So because I was curious about that, I still had the New York mask yesterday. I was like, are we really gonna rock it to Vancouver? You're gonna be wearing a mask with the other's team logo. It's not like it's like, oh, it's like a vaguely New York themed mask. Like the most prominent thing on the mask was the Sirens logo, and so it did have to get the boot there, but kept the back plate. So do want to let everybody know about that. But yeah, I think that that's going to be kind of the rotation we see. I think that when it came to those games, yeah, getting CJ the reps of coming in kind of cold and having to do that is probably what's up. And it's head coach Steve O'Rourke was asked about it yesterday, kind of like what that rotation was going to be, and again alluded to the fact that Schroeder is going to be the starter, but also made it sound like, and the league very much is basically the roster mandates that you have three goaltenders. So I am curious to see how much of Hannah Murphy we might see this year. I mean, last year there were some teams that kind of had some extra goalies around. We didn't see them much. I mean, as it is, CJ only gotten one game with Toronto last year, so um,
Yeah.
it's going to be
Impressive
interesting to see how
performance
that
in that
works.
one game.
Yeah, incredible performance in that one game. But it'll be interesting to see kind of if we see Hannah Murphy at all this year.
Yeah, and as far as what to expect from a starting goalie's workload, at least looking at last season, the goalies from last year, Aaron Frankel with Boston led the league with 23 games played. Schroeder had 20 for the Sirens, so it's roughly in that 20 game range. I think is probably what you can expect from Schroeder.
Yeah, 2/3 of the season, and that's pretty comparable to the NHL. It feels like. I mean, the NHL is kind of starting to go towards more rotations where you'll do closer to a 50-50 split, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. I just think there's also in the PWHL, you just have,
It's fewer
because
games
it's fewer games, they're more
spread
spread
out.
out.
Yeah.
You can give the starter a little bit more, and then also just some of the goalies at the top of the league, just how good they are. you kind of wanting to lean into playing them a little bit more if you can.
Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, so that's the team. That's the setup. I mean, again, it's an incredible team. I'll give you the special teams right now, and I will say, I guess I'll leave out the PK units because one, just kind of the overall rules kind of mean everybody at some point is probably going to be out there for a PK. But also the PK work that they were doing today was basically all the leftovers from the power play units that were getting, going up against them. And so I think that there would be some, particularly on the blue line, there would be some players like Caleb Barnes or Teralova that would probably be part of the PK unit if a real game was happening, but they were pulling work over on the power play side of things instead. But the first power play unit for the Seattle Torrent is kind of Hillary Knight in that net front role. Again, big physical. She loves playing there. And then Alex Carpenter, Hannah Bilka, Julia Gosling, and Teralova on the back end, quarterbacking it. And well, that's power play unit one. I'll read out what power play unit two is, and then I'll talk about the style of power play they were playing because boy, RJ, it's so refreshing to watch a team that's not forced to run a 1-3-1 because they're not in the NHL. Oh, it is something. Power play unit two had Snodgrass in that net front role. Again, another big physical player, loves to play there. And then Serdachny, Jesse Eldridge, and Grant Mentis back as the rest of the forward group, and then Caleb Barnes as the quarterback blue liner on the power play unit. Both of these units, though, and seemingly the style that the power play was going for, kind of umbrella like a little bit in the sense that you have your net front presence, Knight, Snodgrass, like they were always there, and then it was kind of like you were doing like an umbrella overload kind of split where you wanted to have two players up top. So you'd have your defender up top, either Teralova or Barnes, and then depending on the unit, Gosling with Teralova or Grant Mentis with Barnes would also be kind of up high, and then that player could either, if the play moved down low, usually that was Hannah Bilka or Jesse Eldridge's job is to kind of move it down low more towards the corner and look for a play. Then you would see Gosling or Grant Mentis kind of slide in to maybe go back door, and the whole unit kind of shifts down low and tries to overload, but is very heavily weighted towards one side. And then when things weren't that way, you'd have them up high and it looked like a two defender setup. Like it was kind of weird. I don't know what
Huh.
to make of it, to be honest with you. Like I was watching it and I was like, I don't know what to call this.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be another good question for Coach O'Rourke, next chance we get him is kind of how would you describe this? What would you call this? The power play setup. And I'm really interested to see it in game action as well, because it's just a totally different feel in
Mhm.
training camp versus in a game setting when there's real pressure that can be applied, when you're also dealing with an opponent that maybe is held back by the what's it called, the no escape
The no
rule.
escape rule,
And you
yeah.
you alluded to it earlier, but I wanted to spell it out for
Yeah.
everyone real quick. When a penalty is taken, so if you go shorthanded, you have to keep the same players on the ice that were there when the penalty was taken. And so often you can have a situation, if a defender takes a penalty, you're left with three forwards and one defender out there on the ice to try and kill the penalty. And so it does add to a different dynamic for the PKers, but also for the power play unit, where you try and kind of trap those players on the ice until they can naturally get a change or get a whistle. So it's an interesting rule. I like the rule. I think it's really fun. But that's another reason too that in PK practice we've noticed the team practicing, running everybody through
Yep.
for PK practice, because you never know who's going to need to be out there for the start of a PK. Everyone's going to need to know how to kill penalties at least a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And the players have talked about that, and seemingly through the scrimmages was not a problem. And there were a couple times where they had three forwards out there. Coach O'Rourke talked about that yesterday, but they were able to get by, not give up anything.
Perfect 8 for 8
So
on the PK, right?
yep. So they were able to get by, not give up anything there. So that stuff seems to be going well. I will say that first unit power play was able to get more done than the second unit, and I think that second unit is gonna just could probably need a little bit more time to gel. The Knight Bilka connection on the first unit was evident, and I think that that's partly why it was able to look a little bit better during drills today, was just because you actually had players out there who had some chemistry with each other, versus that second grouping. Everybody's just coming together for the first time having to do this.
Yeah, and chemistry is huge on the power play, even more than even strength for sure. Just having the players that work together and have that experience, that's going to be the thing where I really will cut them a lot of slack if it struggles
Yes.
early on, because it's just so hard to have a good power play unit without the experience and the chemistry from a lot of time playing together.
Yeah, the PK units were able to pretty regularly disrupt things and clear the zone pretty quick. Like it was definitely, they had the edge through it. I will also mention on the second unit power play where you had Grant Mentis on kind of back up there playing, along the blue line with Caleb Barnes. There was two times where when that power play unit was out there, Grant Mentis was not on the ice. Bucky wasn't out there, and Wilgren was, and you did truly just have a two defender look on the power play. So I don't know how much of that they're really going to run or what the situation was, but it happened twice and not like back to back. So it wasn't like, an equipment issue or something forcing that to happen. That was just two looks that they tried to have.
Huh. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that. See if they run it, and if so, in what situations? Maybe with a lead or something. I don't know.
Mhm.
But yeah, we'll see if they decide to employ that and when.
Yeah. And then, like I said, I won't, the PK units were kind of all over the place because it was just everybody who was left rotating in and out there. So I won't like read too much into the groupings that they had, but I will say what they were playing from a system standpoint was a very aggressive diamond setup. So they had one player down low, really trying to defend against that net front player that the Torrent had there. Then you had two players kind of up, trying to take away passing lanes, like kind of the east-west passing lanes, and then one player pressuring. And that player pressuring for the whoever had it up high in the zone was very, very, very aggressive, like more aggressive than anything you'll see in an NHL game. And again, I don't know how much of that is just for practice and stuff, or versus how much is going to carry over into the game setting. But it was clear that if a player with the puck kind of entered your zone of the ice, you had the ability to just go all out to go and try to disrupt what they were doing and force them to make a play quickly. And again, I mean, that's I'm all for an aggressive PK like that, especially in a league like this where shooting percentages are lower, all that kind of stuff. I say go for it. Go be aggressive, force them to have to make decisions with that puck quickly. That's how mistakes are made.
Exactly. I mean, I love an aggressive PK, so that is awesome. Love to hear that. Hope they keep that in the games. And also, you got the jailbreak rule. So if you do score a
Yes.
shorthanded goal, the penalty's over. So that's another added incentive to have an aggressive PK.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the PK is going to be there from the beginning with this team. I think the power play is going to take time, certainly based on what I've seen. And look, they've practiced it twice. Like last week was just getting everybody together and going through that kind of stuff. The only times, at least for the publicly available stuff or the media available stuff, that we've seen special teams work was literally yesterday and today. And so it's, it's going to take a sec.
Yeah.
It's understandably so.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's going to be the biggest work in progress area. And I think we'll manage expectations on that certainly early on. I guess the hope in the first game tomorrow is just that Vancouver also has all the same problems with chemistry and coordination. It wouldn't surprise me to just see like nothing doing on special teams, because I think that tends to benefit the PK if the
Yeah.
power plays don't have the chemistry together.
Yeah, exactly. I think that that'll be the case. That being said, I think if you're the Torrent, you do have the advantage of players like Hillary Knight, Alex Carpenter, who are just going to be able to make things happen, right? Like they are legit superstars, top, 10 players in the world doing what they do. They usually can find a way to make something happen. when
Yeah.
when the chip when chips are in and things matter, they find a way to make things happen.
Yeah. And that's what the best power play units and players do. Sometimes it just takes someone special with a little extra ice.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the roster preview, the lineup preview, really, as we, eagerly await tomorrow in the first game for the Seattle Torrent as they on their way up to Vancouver. Who knows? Maybe they're even there by now. Probably not.
I
But
was gonna say an hour. That'd be very fast
that'd be
bus
very
driving. I don't
fast.
know.
Yeah, maybe don't drive the buses that fast if that is the case. But can't wait for that game tomorrow, and then to have some real hockey to digest and be able to go over, and we'll see how the roster looks, how all of these lines look, the D pairs, special teams. I just can't wait.
So
Only
yeah,
one more
me either.
sleep. Only
Yep,
one more
one more
sleep.
sleep. 7 p.m. start, by the way, for that game in Vancouver, and it's available. I mean, we didn't even talk about all like the
Yeah.
TV deals and everything they did for the broadcast, but so you can actually watch it locally on TV. But if not, wherever you are, unless you're in Canada, Czechia, or Slovakia, I guess, you can also just watch it on YouTube on the PWHL YouTube channel. So nice and easy to get all the games that you're gonna want.
Yeah, very easy to stream it, having it just on YouTube. That being said, over the air this year, they signed a deal with in Seattle for the torrent games. The over the air broadcasting partners will be Kong for 6 games of the season, but that does include tomorrow's season opening game, and then Fox 13 for the other 24 games of the season. And they released a thing. You could go to their website and kind of see where those games fall scheduling wise. I will say, as certainly YouTube for me anyway is going to be far more convenient than doing the over the air. But I do think if you have both options available to you, it's probably better to watch it over the air and watch that broadcast just to give them those numbers in market. Not so much for the PWHL because they're going to get the number regardless, whether you're on YouTube or there, but for those local broadcasting partners that this is in fact worth their time and that they should carry women's sports, and this is an important thing to a lot of people in the area, and that they should, again, dedicate their time and their coverage to covering it. And I think that that's something that's important. It's something that we all want. And so if it's easy for you and you have both options available, it might be good to choose that option over YouTube.
Yep, with you completely there. I think that's a good message to send about the interest and everything, and it being worth their while in the local market. So yeah, if you can do both, that's because we get that question so often, just like with our podcast. Like, does it help you if you listen on Spotify, YouTube, whatever? In this case, I think it does help the team watching one place over the other.
Yeah, so that's just a little suggestion there. That's going to do it for this episode of The Downpour. Thank you all so much for listening. Can't wait for tomorrow. I know all of you can't as well, and we'll see you all next time.
Hey everyone, before we go, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey, especially our Terror of the Deep patrons.
Thank you so much for making all this possible. We really appreciate your support.